have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
How's it going? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Happy Monday to everyone out there listening to the show. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for doing that, for being with us. We can't do it without you. We're going to be talking, coming up in about an hour and a half, we'll be talking with Iris Stevens. Wanted to go over a few audio clips of, here's the thing. She is the coordinator, if you will, of the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party. Yeah, that's right. Tea parties are still a thing. It's people who are concerned and feel like they're taxed enough already. You know what I mean? She is, she was integral in really deciding who is going to be the last time, with this whole primary situation. Senator John Cooper very much needed the support of the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party when he was elected the first time to office in a special election, and then immediately changed his mind on a lot of key issues that defined the campaign. Now, this was a long time ago by political standards, 2014, that sort of thing. But most folks who are really involved in the idea of, stopping government from this out-of-control spending, out-of-control growth, they have really good memories when it comes to what a politician tells them they're going to do versus what they actually do. So I wanted to have her on, just talk about that briefly. Because honestly, the fact of the matter is this particular primary race that we're going to be here locally in Northeast Arkansas going to be deciding on, the beginning of March, there's a lot of current issues that really don't have anything to do necessarily with promises broken in the 2014 campaign. Now, it's still very relevant, again, to those who are on the ground, those who have been involved in local politics for a while. But all you got to do is look at somebody like Senator John Cooper's voting record. You look at it today. You look at it now, and there are huge problems with it, deviating from the Republican Party, even, I would even argue, the establishment of the Republican Party, by the way, which is unbelievable if you think about it. You look at how some of the Democrats score, and John Cooper's worse than they are on some surveys, on some scorecards. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. So we'll be talking about that at 7:30. The first thing, though, I want to talk about this morning is what happened in Fayetteville over the weekend. Absolute tragedy. A police officer was shot and killed sitting in his patrol car outside the Fayetteville Police Department. And it is unthinkable. I mean, when you say that law enforcement, they put their lives on the line every single day, this right here is exactly the type of danger that they face. Because you have somebody who's crazy, or I don't know what the motive is, or you have somebody that just hates cops. They're walking around in a uniform. They're in a car. But you know what I mean? If you've got a problem with the police, you're walking around in a uniform, you're walking around driving around in a squad car, and it's a billboard, and it's a beacon. It's we look to our law enforcement to protect and serve, right? In order to do that, they're out there and vulnerable. And it's a tragedy that struck the community of Fayetteville, the state of Arkansas as a whole, I would argue, when an Arkansas police officer was ambushed and shot right outside the department. Fox News, this story has gone national. A guy by the name of Travis Fedshun writes that a police officer in Arkansas was shot and killed as he sat in his patrol vehicle outside his police station Saturday night before the suspected shooter was gunned down by responding officers in a nearby alley. Fayetteville Police Department said in a news release The incident happened around 9:42 when officers inside the station heard gunshots, went outside and heard additional gunshots before encountering a suspect behind the police department fleeing the area. After confrontation, where the suspect was shot and killed, deputies discovered Officer Stephen Carr shot inside his patrol vehicle. Quote, it appears the suspect came into the back parking lot and just executed my officer. That's a quote from Fayetteville Police Chief Mike Reynolds. He said this at a brief news conference. Reynolds told reporters, that the suspect, 35-year-old London Phillips of Fayetteville, was chased into an alley between the police department and the city prosecutor's office. Officers then engaged the suspect and shots were fired. 3 minutes after the shooting was reported, police said that emergency medical personnel responded to the scene, but both the officer and suspected shooter died of their injuries. Evidence shows that Officer Carr was ambushed and executed while City Department of Fayetteville back in April of 2017. He's being called a hero. He was assigned to patrol the Dixon Street area, which is the entertainment district there, right by the University of Arkansas campus. Quote, we would like to thank our community for the outpouring of support, along with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners for their quick response and assistance. Our thoughts and prayers are with Officer Carr's family during this tragic time. The police department said in a news release that a preliminary investigation also shows that 2 officers whose names will not be released at this time fired at the suspect. The officers have been placed on administrative leave. And I saw this Facebook post by a guy named Glenn, and I thought it was... I'm friends with Glenn on Facebook, and that's why this came in my feed. But a lot of people who are in law enforcement, I'm sure they feel this way. Go ahead, Joe. Can you show this Facebook post? Stephen Carr, remember his name. Say his name when you speak of the incident which stole his life, the cold-hearted murder of a young man serving his community. Natalie Hughes. I think that's how you say her name, Natalie Hughes. Remember her name. She ran toward the gunfire. C.A. Floyd, remember his name. He ran toward the gunfire. The names could be interchangeable. They would have all responded the same way, running to the sound of danger instead of fleeing from it. It's in their blood. It's in their mind. It's in their heart. It's in the soul. It's the job of being a police officer. We also need to remember something else in light of all that has happened. Last night, when one of their own had been gunned down, calls were still coming into the police department for law enforcement assistance from the community. They still needed to be answered. The brave men and women of law enforcement facing the fact and knowledge one of their own, from their own family, had been shot and killed in a cowardly act, suited up, and responded. They answered the community's request for help. They responded to the domestics, the car accidents, the drunk and disorderly. The brave faces each and every one of them had to put on will take a toll. They need time to heal. I pray they have it. They'll need downtime to process. I pray they have it. They'll need ears to listen, shoulders to lean on. They'll need their community. The Carr family has lost a son. The Fayetteville Police Department lost a brother. And the Fayetteville community lost a hero. And the heroes that remain will continue to serve the community they love in spite of the tragic loss. I pray for each and every one of them. And I would encourage everybody out there listening to my voice right now to do the same thing, to pray for healing in this tragedy, especially the Carr family and the fact that this is the Christmas season. And his life has been tragically stolen. Sound off on this, facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back here. We've got a lot of news to get to. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
We got Congressman Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, how are you this morning?
I am good. I never thought of myself as a special treat, but that's nice.
Well, you know, I mean...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, welcome back. Gene on Facebook writes that China is exporting killer robots to the Middle East. Governor Asa Hutchinson must be so proud. Gene, I had no idea what you're referencing, so I went ahead and just Googled China killer robots, and I find this article from Defense One. For the first time, a senior defense official has called out Beijing for selling lethal autonomy. This is a piece by Patrick Tucker from November 5th of this year. China is exporting drones that it advertises as having lethal autonomy to the Middle East, Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Tuesday. It's the first time that a senior defense official has acknowledged that China is selling drones capable of taking life with little or no human oversight. As we speak, the Chinese government is already exporting some of its most advanced military aerial drones to the Middle East as it prepares to export its next-generation stealth UAVs when those come online. Man, I did not see this story. This is really interesting. You know, if I had to pick a government that would kind of go the full Terminator, you know, just like, oh, there's nothing wrong with creating a Terminator. I mean, we're going to use them. I mean, we need somebody to police us. We need somebody to police our unruly citizens and harvest their organs. Pretty sure that government would be China. Skynet? What's Skynet? That's a great idea. Skynet? Really? Yeah. Yeah, we've got the technology to enslave ourselves if things go wrong, but you know what? It won't, because the Communist Party of China will see to it that they maintain control. Wow, yeah, that's pretty interesting, Gene. Good find there. Folks, the telephone number, if you want to text us, 870-275-9799. If not, sound off on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. Now, I told you on Friday that we had some big changes coming. Well, you've known about the potential big changes for a while now, because we've been kind of, like a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, we've been previewing these big changes. So I wanted to go ahead. Well, Friday we already told you what's coming the first of the year. Well, not the first of the year, because the first of the year is New Year's Day, but the second of the year. Let's say January 2nd. We've got big changes coming. We're moving away from radio for our main way to communicate with you. We're moving away from it, like, period. We're going to end radio broadcasting. Now, I know what that means. I know some of you are like, oh no. Well, a lot of our audience right now anyway, just so you know, is people who are getting the podcast, people who are watching live online, or people who come back and watch the videos online, throughout the day anyway, okay? So that's the first thing we're doing, but trust me when I say that this is big, and we've got a way. What we're going to be doing is taking this information and disseminating it to a much larger audience. And the proof will be in the pudding. You just got to trust me on this, folks. We're still going to have the same news, the same great content. We're just going to do this with new digital programming, new podcasts, obviously a new website, but it's going to be the same great news. This is also going to be improved access, okay? Greater audience reach, improved access for all of you out there on who are online right now. Many of you who are watching the program online right now, not a lot's going to change from you. You're still going to get the same great news from an internet connection, right? So that's what's going on. That's what we're pushing through the first of the year. And wait till you see. Wait till you see. Just got to trust me on this. This is going to be huge. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. What is that from? Hercules. The Disney movie? Indoor plumbing, it's going to be huge. Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. That movie is interesting. Okay, so where do we want to? We have to go here next. Let me go here. This is a brand new article. It's up at conduitforaction.org, and I think it's a great place to start on a Monday morning. Considering we're talking about some big changes coming down the pike. Now, a lot of times there'll be a fantastic article out with great information about what your government is doing in your name. And here in Arkansas, because we focus on Arkansas, that government is led by Republicans, a lot of Republicans. And unfortunately, the record is clear. We've got a net tax increase on the people, $70 million this fiscal year, another one next fiscal year. Okay, we've got continued growth in spending every single year. It's clear that government is getting larger, government's not getting smaller. And you have the state, essentially trying to raise taxes. You got local communities trying to do the same thing, following suit. Inevitably, you're going to get this quote from somebody out there, though, this criticism from somebody out there. Why don't you spend more time criticizing Democrats? Now, that's a fair question. And to folks who may not, have been following Arkansas politics as closely, I can understand why you would think that. Conduit for Action commentary. Listen to this. One of the complaints we hear is Conduit spends its time criticizing Republicans and ignores the Democrats. Mostly we hear this from the Republican politicians who vote like Democrats and don't like being exposed. While Conduit disagrees strongly with the Democrat agenda, it is true. Most of our articles, both criticism and praise, focus on Republicans, and with good reason. Conduit's focus is on Arkansas government, and there are so few Democrats in the Arkansas legislature, they are largely irrelevant. Conduit's focus is on Arkansas government, and there are few Democrats in Arkansas government. Democrat legislators can do nothing. Listen to this. They can do nothing without the Republicans providing most of the votes needed to pass the legislation. Major legislation is all Republican-sponsored unless the Republicans decide to let a Democrat colleague get credit for something. Republicans have a supermajority in the Arkansas House, a supermajority in the Senate. They have the governor's office. When the Arkansas legislature passes tax and spend legislation, it's sponsored, supported, and passed by left-leaning Republicans. While fiscally responsible legislation, when fiscally responsible legislation is passed, it's also because of Republicans. That's why Republicans get the attention, for good or for bad. Politics at the state capitol is no longer Republican versus Democrat. It's big government Republicans with the support of Democrats versus the Republicans who follow conservative principles of the Republican Party. In reviewing 2019 legislation, we found that in general, Democrat legislators were more likely than Republicans to vote to impose taxes. But it was Republican legislators who provided most of the votes needed to pass the taxes. For example, look at the Arkansas Senate votes on 7 bills to impose taxes, all passed in the Senate. So many Republicans voted yes on these 4 bills, they would have passed even if no Democrat voted for the legislation. Now, is that not crazy to you? SB 336, the gas and diesel fuel tax increases. SB 576, an internet sales tax that you pay for your online purchases. HJR 1018, putting a half-cent sales tax on the ballot at the 2020 election, and HB 1564, a tax increase on your cell phone bills. So many Republicans in the Arkansas Senate voted for those tax increases, they didn't even need the Democrats to pass. Republicans only needed 2 Democrat votes to attain a majority on HB 1565, which was a tax increase on tobacco products and e-cigarettes, and HB 1737, a tax increase on water bills. Republicans needed only 6 Democrat votes to reach a majority on SB 571, special excise tax on cigarettes, and an e-cigarette privilege tax to fund a redistribution of wealth. That bill passed in the Senate but then died in the House without a vote because there were enough conservative Republicans in the House to stop an earned income tax credit proposed by Republicans. It's crazy, right? Because all the tax and spend legislation in Arkansas is sponsored by Republicans, passed by Republicans, supported by a Republican governor, it's hard for Conduit for Action to highlight the few Democrats who merely helped Republicans achieve a blue majority. Yet CFA has done just that. It's rare for a Democrat to be the lead sponsor of any major legislation in Arkansas, since Republicans necessarily decide whether to let a Democrat get credit for passing a bill or sponsoring a similar bill themselves. One of those instances where a Democrat was the lead sponsor of a bill we tracked occurred when Democrat Senator Will Bond was the lead sponsor of a bill with several Republican co-sponsors to let office holders raid their campaign funds and use it as personal income as long as the expenses can be characterized as expenses an office holder might make. Did Conduit for Action let the Democrat off the hook? Absolutely not. You can see that article right there, Making History, Act 879 and Greed. And I remember, I covered that extensively here on the program, what Democrat Senator Will Bond was doing with the help of Republicans. If Republicans would just vote red instead of blue, Conduit for Action could spend all of its time singing the praises of Republicans and defending them from the inevitable left-wing attacks they would be getting from those in the mainstream statewide media, which I wish that's what I was doing here today, because it's very easy to do. It is much harder to convince people that just because you voted for a red t-shirt, your work is done. It's much harder to convince someone that the red t-shirt they voted for is actually voting blue. It's so much easier when somebody identifies as a Democrat to say, well, we don't believe anything close to what they believe. And those are the goalposts. That's the battle that we're facing here as a state. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We have a great rest of the show for you. Did anybody see the guy from Arkansas that gave a shout out to Donald Trump? Bryce Mitchell said, Donald Trump, I'm up here in D.C. If you need help with any politicians, holla at me. I'll do it for free. It's a MMA contest. We'll tell you. You got to hear it for yourself. It's pretty hilarious. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
You know, words. We say words here. So Rick, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always great to have you. Now, this piece. Do we want China to slow down or stop? Talk Business and Politics. It was out last weekend. What can you tell us about it? What was your motivation for writing this?
Well, there's so much talk about China, and we've heard them talk about we want to make investments in this country and that country. We see that they, their goals with things like their Huawei 5G. We don't get the full picture of what China's ambitions are. And so I think people need to be aware of this whole Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically reconstituting the Silk Road. If you think about the historic context of the Silk Road and the trade routes that found their way to China, and China was a significant trade destination going back hundreds of years. Well, they want to reconstitute that Silk Road with the Belt and Road Initiative, and how they do that is they try to make us believe that they're a capitalist economy. They're absolutely not. They are state-owned entities. They're socialists. They're communists. And what they do is they invest in their businesses. They subsidize their businesses, not with a profit motive, but a sustainability motive. That is to say, we want to still be in business when all these other businesses have failed, so they don't have any other options but to do business with us. So that's why they engage in such aggressive intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers as a condition of doing business in China. So we've had American businesses that go over, make the investment in factories and so on to make, we'll say, a widget. Okay, so they've got all the proprietary information at their disposal as a condition of doing business there. Yes, you can come in here, you can avail yourself of our labor market, but we're going to require that you give us your injection molds or whatever proprietary.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, good morning, everybody out there. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Okie dokie. So let's talk a little bit. Bryce Mitchell. You guys know who Bryce Mitchell is? I didn't know who he was until you have to forgive me. I don't follow MMA. I don't. In the featherweight division, which apparently is very rich with talent, MMA fighting. Okay, and there was something that Bryce Mitchell did, some sort of really interesting move he did to win this last fight. And so he wins this fight, and he gets interviewed. Now, this is the first time that an MMA fighter has given a shout out to Donald Trump, right? Some people, this has happened before. But this is what he said. This is Arkansas native Bryce Mitchell. Listen. Oh, we're trying to get it.
Nasty Bryce Mitchell, you own this Capital One Arena here tonight after turning in just the second Twister submission in UFC history.
Submission.
Dominant performance tonight and a huge win. Congratulations. How do you feel?
I want to thank God for my family, my friends, my teammates, coaches, manager, everybody back home in Arkansas support me. Y'all know I love Arkansas. And Reebok, y'all gonna have to kill me or make me some camo shorts because I ain't shutting up till then. And Donald Trump, I'm up here in D.C. If you need help whooping some politician, holler at me, brother. I'll do it for free.
There he is, your winner.
There we go.
The Nasty Bryce Mitchell.
All right, so I was intrigued by this. I was intrigued by this gentleman, and I wanted to know. Okay, well, who is Bryce Mitchell? He's got all this love for Arkansas. Obviously, he's a native. So, who's Bryce Mitchell? So I did a little research, and UFC's got a great write-up on him. Mitchell putting Arkansas MMA on the map. So apparently, from what I can gather, everybody wants this guy to train in big gyms and, relocate, and he refuses to do so because he likes the low cost of living here in Arkansas. Listen to this. While some may simply see Mitchell as a kid from the outskirts of nowhere who hunts, fishes, and lives in a fifth-wheel trailer under a metal roof structure he built himself, it's that authenticity and commitment to his Arkansas roots that makes the up-and-comer easy to get behind. Plus, staying at home in Arkansas is financially prudent for the avid outdoorsman who likes getting his hands dirty and tracking all kinds of different projects on the plot of land he calls home. If you want to move to California to go train at some other gym, or you want to train in New York and live there, well, I hope you like paying taxes and the high cost of living. Can you go buy a trailer for $5,000 to live in New York? Probably not. Can you do that in California? Probably not. Arkansas, the cost of living is lower, and that's an advantage because I'm less stressed about the money. Arkansas is lower, and I can live off of what money I've got. I think it's an advantage. Everybody says I need to go to a big gym somewhere, but I think it's an advantage living in Arkansas. All of that is why he's so adamant about wanting to get some camouflage gear to wear inside the octagon. It's not a fashion statement, but rather a nod to where he's from. So that was that shout out to Reebok there. He wants some camo shorts from Reebok. Get this man. So can somebody get this man some camo shorts? I identify with it. Okay, let me see. Once all the dust settles, he'll head back home to Arkansas to celebrate the holidays and get to work on another project or two. Anyway, I don't know anything about MMA fighting. Nothing. But apparently, getting a submission with a twister, and then what they said, a twister, is a big deal. So anyway, there you go. There's Bryce Mitchell. Again, I don't follow MMA, so for me to say I have never heard of the guy, I haven't heard of anybody in MMA, really. I've heard of, I've heard of wrestlers, but, I don't even know. I mean, I don't even follow that, but anyway. Let me know what you guys think about this. Did any of you guys out there follow MMA? I'd like to hear from you. Let me know what it is that I'm missing here. Okay, Joe's looking up what a twister submission is this morning. Okay, speaking of the Democrat, you know how we just did this article on just did this article on how come Conduit doesn't ever criticize Democrats? Here's a criticism for you right here. So Roby Brock recently sat down with the chairman of the Arkansas Democratic Party. Now you can't say scandalous, right? Michael John Gray is the chairman of the Arkansas Democrat Party. He's come under some criticism because of some, financials of the Democrat Party that don't quite match up his own, somebody on his own side from the Blue Hog Report exposed all of that, and they've essentially kind of explained it at this point. But the big deal with the Arkansas Democrat Party is that they're not going to have a candidate running against incumbent Republican Senator Tom Cotton. They're not going to have one because Josh Mahoney filed for the office, and then a couple of hours after filing had closed, he dropped out of the race because he said there was, he had family that had medical emergency or something like that, which is essentially not the right thing to say if you wanted to maybe use a loophole to get a candidate on the ballot. They're not going to have one, it looks like. So Roby Brock talking to Michael John Gray, some interesting quotes here about not having a candidate on the ballot, which is really a total embarrassment for the Arkansas Democrat Party. Roby Brock writes that Gray said he still hasn't heard from former U.S. Senate Democratic candidate Josh Mahoney. Hasn't heard from the guy. Mahoney exited the race. I bet Mahoney's heard from a lot of people, though. I bet Mahoney's got a lot of voice messages. What do you think? Still hasn't heard from Mahoney, who exited the race about 2 hours after the filing period closed in November, citing family health concern. The move left Democratic Party officials without a candidate, and since Mahoney's withdrawal, there has been no significant communication with him despite multiple efforts. Gray said he has also not seen signs from anyone else in the Mahoney family as to the nature of the illness. He's quoted as saying, "Not hearing from other members of the Mahoney family is not something that's surprising. Family illnesses, family situations are private, and unfortunately we live in a world where privacy isn't as valuable to some as it used to be. But you have to respect that." He went on. Again, Democratic chairman of Arkansas saying, "I do not subscribe to the theory that the Cotton campaign put the squeeze on Josh. However, it says a lot of things about our political system that an incumbent senator would take credit for utilizing the process in such a way that would infer that they almost had some sort of blackmail, might not be a fair word, but something to that nature, to get a candidate out where he didn't have an opponent," Gray said, in reference to a memo from the Cotton campaign that bragged about opposition research on Mahoney that they held until after filing closed. So here we have a situation where the Democratic Party of Arkansas chairman is lamenting the fact that the Cotton campaign would be happy or would hold opposition research back, not release it until the filing was officially over. And by the way, they didn't even release it. They said they were going to release it. And Mahoney dropped out. Here's a quote from the Cotton campaign memo. Quote, "Other damaging material that has not been made public. It was in the hands of reporters, so that means that the reporters called Josh Mahoney. This is not rocket science here. And the Democrats don't need to. This is totally normal political behavior, right? For Michael John Gray to be like, I don't know if blackmail's the right word. Well, you're pretty much accusing Senator Cotton's campaign of blackmail. I mean, just like here's something. Just like the phone call with the Ukrainian president was a giant nothing burger and something that presidents can do, have done. They just don't like it because it's the current President Trump, and he has a way different point of view about international affairs than anybody else. Just because it's not working out for your favor doesn't mean that there's something against norms that's taken place. But that's what we get from the left, right? I mean, can you imagine if the Democrats had pulled something like this successfully? I mean, it's not the Cotton campaign's fault. It's not Tom Cotton's fault that the Democrats picked a really apparently a lousy candidate. Our strategy was to hold our research, allow Mahoney to gain momentum to prevent other candidates from entering the race, and work with the state Republican Party and the National Republican Senatorial Committee to release this information after it was too late for anyone else to enter the race. I mean, sounds like Mahoney had a skeleton in the closet or two or three. That's what it sounds like to me. But here's Michael John Gray. It's sad to think that if I was a U.S. Senator, I would take credit for operating that way. I don't know what happened. I know the information that came out about Mahoney's discrepancies on his filings was not new. It had came out months before, reported in the Gazette, Democrat Gazette. I had extensive conversations with Josh and his campaign team, as well as members of the media that had reached out to me about it, about the mistakes or the amendments that needed to be made, and That's truly what we you believe they were, and what was shown to me that they were. So I think this is just an unfortunate event, and that's being polite about it. But at the end of the day, only Josh Mahoney really knows what's going on. Okay, well, if only Josh Mahoney knows what's going on, maybe we don't need to use the word blackmail when we're talking about Tom Cotton's campaign doing simple opposition research on their opponent and waiting until the filing's over to then release it to the news media. The news media then called Josh Mahoney for comment, I'm assuming. And Mahoney said, uh-oh, you know what? I have this uncle that's not feeling too good. I just don't think I can do this. That's clearly what happened. And to not just admit it, Michael John Gray, you know what? He should just be like, yeah, we picked a bad candidate. It's just it is what it is. I know that's his, you know. I mean, I know he's saying he's got a family member that's sick, and maybe that's true, but the bottom line is how this all worked out. It certainly makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. He's never going to say that, though. I'm sorry. Telephone number 870-275-9799. That's the telephone number if you want to contribute to the program. The University of Arkansas has chosen a new football coach. They're going with the offensive line coach from the University of Georgia Bulldogs. Name is Sam Pittman. He was at the University of Arkansas football program back in 2015, or at least he left for Georgia after the 2015 regular season to take that offensive line coaching position with the Georgia Bulldogs. Now he's coming back to Arkansas and going to be the coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks football program. So that's, you know, a lot of people have been very, very upset. I got a lot of friends who are just, I'm talking about die-hard Razorback fans. You know what I mean? And they were, I felt so sorry for them because of how football was affecting their lives. You know what I mean? I legitimately did. I thought, I mean, you know, it does nobody any good to have football programs that are losing, or a football program that's losing. So anyway, that's big news. I'm sure there's going to be press conference, because this was posted by Bob Holt, this one story that I have at 2:30 this morning. So, I mean, you would assume there's going to be some press conferences today, and a lot of people kind of getting excited and amped up for what is to come. Moving on to this story. Medicaid changes hit mental health services. Payment cuts cited as providers shut. I'm going to take this in a way that maybe the average person may not, so pay attention to this. There are cited reduced reimbursement costs, so payments, reduced reimbursement payments. The state Medicaid program is reducing their reimbursement rates, apparently, and that's why 2 more providers serving Arkansas's mentally ill have closed or announced plans to do so. When I saw this, the operative phrase there is mentally ill, because there are 2 schools of thought anytime there's a mass shooting. I know there was a shooting down there in Pensacola. Terrorist from the Saudi, a guy in the Saudi Arabian military. Need to pursue that wherever the facts lead. But there are 2 schools of thought, right? The left says red flag laws and what? Gun control. Red flag laws and gun control. This is what we must have. We got to have the power to take somebody's rights away before they even do anything, and we got to make it super hard to get guns. We know that the real reason the left pushes gun control is because they want to take away your guns. Beto O'Rourke, an Irish-American masquerading as a Hispanic, taught us that, let the cat out of the bag. There were multiple Democrats that were so upset that Beto O'Rourke was honest about the policy goals of the Democrat Party when it comes to your natural God-given right of self-defense. They want to take your guns. So the left says, we want to take your guns. We want red flag laws. That's what we want anytime there's a mass shooting. What does the right say? They say, no, Second Amendment. I'd rather suffer the consequences of too much liberty than the consequences of not enough liberty, which is a mangled quote of something Thomas Jefferson said. And you know what we say? We say maybe we need to focus on mental health. Mental health. Well, in Arkansas, state Medicaid programs, reimbursement rates going down, according to Andy Davis's report, and that's why we have 2 more providers serving Arkansas's mentally ill that are closing their doors. Organization in West Memphis called Points of Light, a 44-bed assisted living facility. That's an interesting name. Perspectives Behavioral Health Management, a Fort Smith company that had provided counseling and other services to about 2,500 patients, will close Friday. The closing is due to DHS. Listen to this. DHS massive cuts and more cuts that are coming in the future. We just can't make it. Stop. So, the state of Arkansas, under the leadership of Governor Asa Hutchinson, it is no secret that we take our tough decisions and we govern the state by task forces. We assemble task forces to whittle down the full legislative body to a smaller group of legislators that then, through a series of meetings that are very, very costly and expensive, through a series of contracting certain third parties that are going to tell you what you already want to hear. In many cases, you get the predetermined outcome that you want. We get choice architecture. And they are then going to control where we go. They may present you with choices, but the choices themselves, they're pretty much okay with either way you go. It really cuts out the entire legislative process. Everything's done even more so behind closed doors. So, the last task force on Medicaid, which I called a task force because that's exactly what it was, recommended an $835 million cut to traditional Medicaid so that they could pay for the expanded Medicaid expansion under Obamacare, otherwise known as the private option, now called Arkansas Works. This is just something to take into consideration because it appears that those cuts are actually having consequences. Now, at the time, I said to myself, well, that doesn't seem right. Taking $835 million over the course of so many years, cutting that, calling it savings, but then turning around and spending. Of course, apparently they're not cutting enough because we had to raise our taxes $70 million, a net tax increase $70 million, just to pay for the overages of Blue Cross Blue Shield government-sponsored Medicaid expansion. But for somebody that follows the news, I just thought I should tell you when I saw this piece, I thought of 2 things. I thought of red flag laws, gun control, and mental health. And I thought of the fact that under the current leadership, they put forward a plan to, quote, save $835 million. They have been out on social media over the last 4 years bragging about it. And now we have Andy Davis's piece that these companies are closing because they can't take the cuts. What's the truth here? What we need to get to the bottom of this? Yeah. But the issue, the overall issue here is that we need to take a break. My goodness. The overall issue here is that you really can't tell where the private companies begin and the government begins. Where one ends and the other begins. That's a whole other can of worms. We do have to break for a minute and back in just a moment. I had no idea what time it was. Forgive me, folks.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Devices or technology you have, and then not before too long, they'll go down the street, open up a factory of their own, and produce exactly the same thing, essentially a counterfeit product, and put that on the market. That's just one example of the kind of aggressive economic behavior they engage in. To say nothing of the fact that as under WTO rules, they're still being considered, given the consideration as a developing economy. When you can spend the billions of dollars that they spend outside of their own economy, for example, funding a military base, a port in Djibouti, Africa, when you can do that, when you can go to other countries and promise them 5G service, and in exchange what you're doing is trying to access the rare earth minerals to help pursue your economic goals, you're not a developing economy. You have arrived. So you need to drop this sham.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. All right, so we were just talking about the featherweight champion. Is he a champion, or he just won this awesome fight? He got his start on like the Ultimate Fighter season 27. Bryce Mitchell. Somebody was asking where's he from? Well, he's from Arkansas. What town? I'm not for sure what town. I know it says he was born in Cabot, so somewhere around that area. But he gave a shout out to Donald Trump. Said he was in D.C. for a big fight that he won, and he said, "Hey, Donald Trump, while I'm up here in D.C., if you need help whooping any politicians, if you need help whooping any politicians, I'm here in D.C. I'll do it for free." Now, he won with a very interesting move, which was called the Twister, right, Joe?
Yeah.
You Googled what a Twister submission is.
I looked it up, and I went on YouTube and found a couple videos where I saw the first Twister submission, and I could see why it's a very difficult thing to pull off, especially with professional MMA fighters. What ends up happening is you use both of your legs to wrap around your opponent's legs and use that positioning to twist the lower half of their body in one direction, and then you use your hands and you kind of clamp them together and put it against their head and twist their upper body in the opposite direction. So it ends up twisting the spine in two different directions.
Yeah.
And it creates a very painful experience, and that's why they tap out so quickly.
Yeah, that's that sounds absolutely excruciating. Man. All right. Well, thank you, Joe, for that. I appreciate it. Folks, we are going to go to break. We've got one more hour coming your way next. We got Irish Stevens coming up at 7:30. You don't want to miss it. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Of being a developing economy and start to play in the real world, which means that you have a different set of rules because, developed economies like the United States and Europe and others, they don't get that same consideration. I mean, that's just one thing, but then all tied up in this is their march toward military supremacy. What they want to be is not only the supreme economy in the world, but also the supreme military. They are poised to deploy 2 carrier groups by, I believe, 2025. That's never happened before. It's not in their wheelhouse to be an expeditionary force, and certainly not to be able to deploy global capacity, global range carrier groups. But they're on course to do that, and how they're doing that is by exploiting the economy globally. And I'm seeing some good signs around the world from countries that are waking up to this, saying, you know what, this sounds good, but we're just going to pass on this. We think long-term maybe we need to align with the United States or other nations that are not trying to take advantage of us. I'll give you an example of one nation that was grossly taken advantage of. They went to Costa Rica. The Chinese went to Costa Rica, and they pressured them to expel their Taiwanese diplomats. And Costa Ricans are like, well, we don't necessarily need to expel the Taiwanese diplomatic corps. They said, well, if you do, we'll build a soccer stadium for you. Well, I guess Costa Rica needed a soccer stadium more than they needed any kind of Taiwanese relationship, and they expelled them. As a result, they got a soccer stadium. It's that kind of belligerent deal-making that is a problem around the world. It's not as though I don't like Chinese people. That's not it at all. I'm not against Chinese people. I'm against the Chinese government and the belligerent stance that they're taking economically and militarily.
Yeah. And I think, and I want to thank you for, first of all, using your official, position, or, using the, the fact is when a U.S. congressman, speaks, people listen. And this is a big issue. And I'm really glad that you're speaking out against, like you said, the Chinese government. And calling these companies, in some cases, they're Chinese entities. And this idea is that they are communists. We forget that. And, there does seem to be, for example, I read Peter Schweitzer's book, and that book talks about how, the Chinese can actually get around, campaign finance laws or I would even say bribery laws by employing the children of powerful politicians. And that's incredible to me.
Well, here's an example. There's a couple of things that they can do legally. Another thing I need to point out is I've been briefed on this by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence about what they're now seeing a need to reach out into communities and make them aware of essentially a business intelligence and supply chain integrity model. And this is all based on 2 things. One of them is the Confucius Institute, which places Chinese students in academic institutions across the country. The other is just the out-and-out theft. I mean, I've been told about people stealing soybeans, for example, out of a grain bin, just taking samples, walking up, taking samples out of stored soybeans, and now what do you think that's about? We had in 2017 we had 5 Chinese nationals in the state of Arkansas doing research with University of Arkansas Extension Service that were indicted on federal charges. So this is not just something that happens, in the national security space. So
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, looks like the Facebook video has been shut down because we played this clip from the UFC, the interview with Bryce Mitchell, an Arkansas native who won a fight in the featherweight division of the UFC and gave a shout-out to Donald Trump. Something tells me it is less a copyright claim about the UFC and more a copyright claim of Facebook not wanting Donald Trump's popularity to get into the pop culture. Period. You know what I'm saying? Like 100%, that's got to be. I mean, you know, that's my speculation anyway. I'm 100% convinced of that. Because it's not the first time that it's happened. I think we're still up on YouTube, however, so feel free. 870-275-9799 is telephone number if you want to contribute to the conversation today. So, a tale of two economies. Joe, how many times have you heard that we are headed towards a recession? I mean, it's a... Most of the people in the mainstream media have been warning of a recession. Now, we have talked with, several economists. We've talked with, Michael Busler, Dr. Michael Packo. We've talked to folks who are more optimistic. Dr. Busler certainly is. He has been very optimistic in spite of. You say what you want to. Every time we've had him on, if there's news that's negative out there about the economy here in America, he gives a different opinion. He actually is a lot more optimistic about it. Well, on December the 5th, Joe, throw this up here. This works very well with media being biased. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette had a piece where they compiled, it says that this was compiled by Democrat-Gazette staff from Wire Reports. Job gains in November way down, data shows 67,000 fewest in 6 months. Now, this is according to what? It's according to a survey. Okay? U.S. companies added just 67,000 jobs in November. A private survey found barely half the gain of the previous month. Payroll processor ADP said Wednesday that the manufacturers, construction firms, and mining companies cut 18,000 jobs combined. Companies with fewer than 20 employees also slashed their payrolls. November's job gain is the lowest in 6 months and suggests that hiring is weakening, economists said. Yet job gains frequently fluctuate from month to month. So, quote, the weakness in the ADP report does not guarantee a disappointment in the upcoming government data. But Silver said, this according to Daniel Silver, an economist for J.P. Morgan, but Silver said the disappointing ADP report is supportive of our view that the trend on job growth has downshifted lately. Now, this was posted again in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, December the 5th. Now, you all know what happened on Friday after we got off the air, don't you? On Friday, after Conduit News concluded its daily radio broadcast, the jobs numbers came in, and it was huge. Gargantuan gains. And this is going on while the Democrats are impeaching or trying to impeach the President of the United States. The next day, or 2 days later, on December 7th, but posted at 9:17 in the morning, we have this story. Headline, U.S. gains 266,000 jobs. Unemployment drops to 3.5%. Again, another piece, quote, compiled by Democrat Gazette staff Wire Reports. Hiring in the United States jumped last month to its highest level since January as employers shrugged off trade conflicts and a global slowdown and added 266,000 jobs. I mean, can you contrast that? You know, Canada's economy had some bad news. So you've got Justin Trudeau, blackface Trudeau, and he's making all of these snide comments at the NATO summit up in over across the pond in Great Britain. You know, they've got these secret hot mics where he's upset that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, is having a 40-minute press conference and, is doing whatever he wants and not kowtowing to the globalist order, and Justin Trudeau. And then, of course, you got Macron as well, little conflict there with the president. And Trudeau gets back home, and he gets bad economic numbers for his economy, and our president has fantastic numbers, and you can attribute it to his leadership. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that sometime next year there'll be somebody in the Federal Reserve that thinks they can set the economy the way we set our thermostats and attempt to try to tank the economy and blame the president for it so that he'll lose. I think many people are expecting something like that to happen. Economic meddling in our election, if you will. But the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up more than 330 points. This was as of 9/17 on Friday. Quote, I think that this report is a real blockbuster. Daniel Zhao, senior economist at the career site Glassdoor. Payroll smashed expectations. These were massive. I mean, Jim Cramer, from the CNBC show where he has all of the pops, bangs, and the whizzes, doing. That guy. He says it's the best job numbers he's seen in our lifetime. In our lifetime. I'd play the clip, but probably get some sort of other copyright claim on the digital platforms. The best jobs numbers we've seen in our lifetime. And yet, how many times? I mean, if you just do a simple Google search, how many times where you say, U.S. economy recession? Okay, we'll type in U.S. economy recession, and we'll hit the news button on Google. Well, we have Business Insider, the latest, 21 hours ago. For the first time in U.S. history, a decade will pass without the country falling into recession. But one day ago, Forbes, the next recession may come by stealth. 2 days ago, CNBC, it's possible the U.S. economy is not late cycle, but rather just recharging. 2 days ago, U.S. economy smashes forecasts. Okay, so these are all people reporting on the news. But boy, folks, if you go back, I mean, you will find story after story after story, especially from the likes of Bloomberg, talking about we're going to hit a recession over and over and over again. And you guys know I'm right. I mean, it's for the last 6 months. Now, scratch that. For the last year, that's all you've heard. People wishing, almost trying to collectively will a recession to come because, and this, I mean, it all comes back to the president. They want to impeach him to get him out, or they want to beat him at the polls. And the only way they're going to beat him at the polls, they think, is if the economy is tanking. Okay, so 3 weeks ago, Forbes.com headline, spread the news, recession likely soon. Here's what to watch for. Then we have The Observer. Is trying to predict a coming recession a bad bet? Ask the gamblers. Anyway, we're going to take a break here. We're going to reset. And then I'm going to tell you about Joe Biden. Oh, by the way, on that whole thing with the Democrat Gazette, be careful where you get your news. You know what I mean? The fact that you had a report citing a private survey saying the economic numbers are terrible. And then 2 days later, the actual numbers come out. That's just like the Inspector General report is due out today. According to one report I saw, probably not going to see anything until after 12 Eastern. or 12 Central, rather, 1 Eastern. We'll wait and see. But for the last 2 weeks, all you have heard is what I actually think it's fake news from the Washington Post saying, trying to basically influence the opinion of the report, but before any of us have actually even read it. So let's not rely on private surveys. Let's rely on the actual numbers that are released. How about that? We're going to take a break. I'll tell you about Joe Biden is now contradicting his top advisor about his son, Hunter, and Burisma. What does that mean for Arkansas? I'll tell you next.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Speak. This is happening at home, in our backyard, where Chinese people, or Chinese government rather, are seeking to place people in positions to exploit, steal, whatever it takes to give them
money, power, prestige, essence. Available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Biden, according to Breitbart, has now contradicted his top advisor. See, Joe Biden's got... There's at least one advisor that says that they told Joe about his son being on the board of Burisma. I mean, come on, are we really going to play this? He didn't know. There's pictures of them all golfing together. This is stupid. Harris Alec writes that Joe Biden is claiming staffers never warned that his youngest son's role with Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian natural gas conglomerate, posed a conflict of interest, contradicting one of his top advisors. A former vice president who is increasingly under pressure from voters to explain Hunter Biden's wheeling and dealing overseas told NPR in an extensive interview on Friday that his staff never brought the issue to his attention. Quote, nobody warned me about a potential conflict of interest. Nobody warned me about that. Joe Biden said before suggesting that staffers were unwilling to broach the subject because at the time his oldest son, Beau, was losing his battle with brain cancer. Quote, well, my son was dying, so I guess that's why. But they should have told me. Wow. Is Joe Biden using the death of his son, reminding the media that he faced a tragedy and lost one son, and now what are you doing, man? You're persecuting my other son. You're trying to. I was dealing with my first son dying, and I didn't know about Burisma and yada yada yada. Is that really what was going on? Something to consider, right? I mean, no, I wouldn't put anything past some of these individuals. Joe Biden's claim of ignorance, however, is undercut by statements by Amos Hochstein, once a top advisor to the former vice president. Made in the past, Hochstein, who served as the Obama administration's special envoy energy affairs, told the New Yorker in July that he had broached the subject with Hunter Biden and Burisma with the former vice president in December 2015. Quote, as Joe Biden prepared to return to Ukraine, his aides braced for renewed scrutiny of Hunter's relationship with Burisma. Amos Hochstein, the Obama administration's special envoy for energy policy, raised the matter with Biden, but did not go so far as to recommend that Hunter Biden leave the board. Well, I mean, he was perfectly qualified. How could Joe Biden get Hunter Biden off the board? I mean, he's an individual. Their father-son relationship doesn't dictate what board he serves on, right? So last week we did have a breakthrough. A small breakthrough, but a breakthrough. John Brummett, the progressive liberal columnist, finally decided to write about Asa Hutchinson and his son, Asa Hutchinson III, and their dealings with the communist Chinese entities coming to Arkansas and also being clients of the governor's law firm, which he says he has no financial interest and doesn't anticipate going back to the firm after he leaves office. It's all his son. It's all his son's doing. His son is an international lawyer specializing in immigration work and visas, and there's just not too many people in Arkansas that could do what he does. Now, John Brummett, in reporting on Asa and his son in his column, used it to defend the Bidens and basically say, see, the Republicans are hypocrites. They're going after the Bidens, but they're not saying anything about Asa Hutchinson. Oh, and by the way, even if they did, it wouldn't matter because Asa and his son have done nothing wrong, and Hunter and his son have done nothing wrong. Leave it to Arkansas. Leave it to us and our leaders to essentially undercut what is a key narrative, and that is that Hunter and Joe Biden are corrupt. The question is it corrupt, what we're witnessing with the governor's law firm that he's no longer listed as an attorney on? He was listed as an attorney. Not anymore. He's just listed as the founder. Question is there corruption here? Is there the appearance of corruption? Oh, you betcha. Oh, you betcha. There's the appearance of corruption all day long. If you were writing a movie about corruption, this would be what you would write. Especially with the communist Chinese. I mean, it's so interesting. I wonder, and I seriously, I'm asking this, I'm not just saying this for the effect. You got to wonder if the FBI has been investigating this for a while. Back when there were rumblings of John Woods being investigated by the FBI, or Gilbert Baker, or Jake Files, or Micah Neal, or Jeremy Hutchinson, or Milton Rusty Cranford. Back when you would hear those, there were times here in Arkansas, you guys may not know this, where, man, the political class in Little Rock, they were convinced that anybody could be wearing a wire because they knew the FBI were investigating public corruption in Arkansas. And I think what happened is the FBI started looking into public corruption with the GIF funds, General Improvement Funds, and that led them to the Medicaid fraud, and it kind of coalesced with the Western District of Missouri, sharing what they had and what the Arkansas District had, and that's when it kind of all blew up. That's why the General Improvement Fund scam and the Medicaid fraud with Preferred Family Health Care, they're all connected because of Rusty Cranford. If you eventually connect the dots enough, you'll see how those two cases actually kind of feed off of one another. I believe they certainly fed off of one another in the investigative process. It's just my opinion on that. But there were rumors of FBI investigations for a long time. We're talking years before you actually got, and then you'd have damaging information leaked. Not leaked, but damaging information reported on in the press. That led to, people like me begging and pleading with the U.S. attorneys, please, you guys have got to restore the faith in our government. If elected officials are allowed to do X, then we don't have faith in our elected officials. You've got to do something about this. It was everything. Jake Files was one, where it was the media outlets, the Gazette and others, the Democrat Gazette and others, for some reason the Times Record, the Times Record, they reported that Jake Files had falsified bids, right? They reported in the discovery about all of the money he owed. All of that happened and was reported before Jake Files was indicted. All of it happened before that. And so that's kind of why I have been so flabbergasted that the mainstream media in Arkansas doesn't want to report this story and just state the facts. And sure, you can please print what the governor has said about this, how that this is no big deal, and that there's nothing he can do to stop the appearance, but you just have to trust him. This is no big deal. You just have to trust Mike Preston. There is no national security threat with the Chinese. See, there's so many questions and so many Freedom of Information Acts that should be filed at this point by every member of the media in this state, and I'm not sure it's happening. Now, maybe it is. But I will just tell you, I am starting to wonder if there aren't serious investigations afoot looking into all of this. Because it looks odd. It looks very, very odd. We are in essentially a little bit of a Cold War with the Communist Chinese right now. An economic war, an economic Cold War, I don't know. But there's clearly a conflict going on right now, and hopefully there's not a big one in the future or on the horizon, but it has never made sense. The only way communist Chinese investment in Arkansas makes sense is if Hillary Clinton is president of the United States. Then everything makes sense. Then Asa Hutchinson's chief economic development policy in Arkansas, selling Arkansas to the communist Chinese. If Hillary Clinton is president, it makes perfect sense. But with President Trump as president, it does not make sense. We'll be back in just a moment.
What?
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and
had too much
overtaxing us
caffeine this
by
morning.
giving a tax-deductible donation
I'm gonna be
to
honest.
Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization
I had
in
too much
Arkansas
this
that
morning,
never
and I'm
stops
kinda
promoting
jittery.
small business
Shouldn't have
and
this
limited
energy
government.
drink here.
Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time.
Okay.
Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
A competitive advantage. This is happening. It's happened at MD Anderson, where they're stealing research
So
takes
good.
place down there. It's all of our academic institutions are targets. Not to mention any kind of tech development. You think about the high-tech corridor in the Silicon Valley, for example, vulnerable to exploitation by Chinese nationals that are placed there by the government. This is happening every single day, and they'll promise you the moon. They'll say we're going to make these investments. Let me give you the kind of example of kind of investment that they promise in places like nations in Western Africa, as an example. We'll come in here and we'll make infrastructure improvements. We'll give you a 5G, and you guys will be on the road to economic prosperity. And we're going to give you all kinds of, they're going to create all kinds of jobs. Okay, so what they do is they'll come in and the payoff is they get access to those rare earth minerals that you see countries in Africa have abundance of. And guess who gets rich? Probably that corrupt leader of the nation in question. Then the Chinese come in and they'll feign some sort of a project, but look, they're not creating jobs. They're bringing Chinese people in to fill those jobs. It essentially is a closed loop. So they bring in all the resources necessary. The Chinese people aren't out on the economy making an investment in the Chinese economy or impacting the Chinese economy, the local economy in any measurable way. And so all this is just a sham. What they want is the rare earth minerals, and they make them a deal, and then it turns out to not be such a good deal after all. And so there are nations in South America, for example, that are having this presented. This is our backyard. Central America, we know the Chinese are aggressively engaged in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. It doesn't surprise you that they're involved in Nicaragua, but I told you about Costa Rica. These are our neighbors, for crying out loud. They're very aggressive in Cuba right now, to say nothing of what they do here in the United States. And then their ability to influence through their soft media push, for example. They go to the ag media, of all things, and they place op-eds, and they
Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute to the program. Hey, we have back with us, we've got Iris Stevens. She's the coordinator for the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party. Iris, how are you this morning?
I'm just great.
I'm glad to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here.
So I wanted to have you on. I wanted to kind of preview this District 21 primary between incumbent Senator John Cooper and State Representative Dan Sullivan. Now, first of all, just a little background. You followed the first round. The first time Senator Cooper was elected, he very much needed the support.
We worked for him. We gave money. We knocked on doors. We wrote letters for him. We, did everything that we could to get him elected because we thought that he was going to be very, very conservative and that he would, number one thing, he was going to try to fight to stop this Obamacare in Arkansas, because we knew what it was going to do financially to the state. We'd already done that study. So we were extraordinarily disappointed when he got down to Little Rock and started making decisions that were totally opposite of what he said he would do when he was running. Mm-hmm. And the number one, of course, was that he voted to continue the Obamacare and then came home and claimed that it was the best decision, when actually he was working in conjunction with the governor who wanted this, So we've just been very, very disappointed that he has not upheld his promises, that he's voted with Democrats. I would say almost as much as he's voted with Republicans and for specific issues, So.
We actually have an audio clip. Joe, can you play this audio clip? This is just a montage of when John Cooper ran for office the first time. And Iris, actually, let me give you these headphones here. You can listen yourself. Go ahead, Joe, whenever you're ready.
First of all, I'll say I'm opposed to the private option. It is Obamacare in Arkansas, and Obamacare from the beginning to the end is an unworkable act. It is a gathering of power, and it will not provide the health care that we need. If we accept this, we are putting Arkansas on the hook for a couple of years. There is a short-term savings, but a couple of years down the road, there is a crossover of costs, and then it's going to be very expensive. Secondly, the idea that this will reduce the amount of cost that is unreimbursed by emergency rooms is also false, because statistics now are showing that that's just not the case, that those costs are also rising regardless of whether or not the private option is incorporated. This is the implementation of the healthcare exchanges in Arkansas, which is the very fiber of Obamacare. And it is a system that right now is bouncing along on square wheels. It is very expensive. It's going to get more expensive. Premiums are going up and copays are going up. And just this morning we looked at our copay, and it was up tremendously.
Okay, so that's just one of the many clips that we have. Iris, your response to that. It's amazing to hear, right?
It takes me back a while, yes. And of course, conservatives would have voted for someone who was saying that because it looked like he'd done his study. It looked like he was well aware of what the problems were. So not only were we, sworn to support him, but that's why we were so taken aback when he got down there and he changed his total tune.
Yeah.
And then was very angry at the Tea Party when we said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What are you doing? You promised that you would do this. And he has been actually actively ugly to the Tea Party and, people in it.
Wasn't he responsible for filming sending a camera crew?
Yeah. Can I
take those off, yeah.
He was yes, he was. We came in one evening and Joe and Brenda were there from Conduit. And in walks this guy with the camera. And so I thought, okay. And I went back there, and I actually knew the guy. And I said, what's going on? He said, well, I'm here to film your meeting. And he said, is that okay? And I said, yeah, we don't have anything to hide. And I said, where's this coming from? And Ray Hackworth, who is, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be real ugly and say the word lapdog for Senator Cooper, came in and he said, well,
You just take them off.
He said, the governor wants this tape. He wants the film. And I thought, the governor wants a film of our Tea Party meeting? John Cooper had been invited to that meeting.
Yeah.
We always invite our legislators, let them come and talk about issues, but he wasn't there that night, I don't think. But anyway, so they went ahead and filmed it, and I said, I really wanted to know why the governor would want to be filming. So I called down there, and they said, oh, she don't get that information out. And I said, yeah, I think you should. So I filed an FOI on the governor's office to find out what had happened. Lo and behold, when it all came down, John Cooper, through Ray Hackworth, and Jim Hendren had decided to film our Tea Party.
Wow.
Because they wanted to know what we were saying, what horrible things. All they had to do was ask.
Yeah.
We didn't hide anything. And I contacted Senator Hendren. He was as nice as he could be. He said, you're right, it was stupid. I apologize. And he just continued to apologize. He said, I'm sorry. It just seemed like it was one of those, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And he said, it was stupid. We should have contacted you and all this. He said, but the other person was John Cooper who had done it. And when I called Senator Cooper, I said, what's up? I said, you were actually invited. He was the ugliest I have ever had anybody talk to me. And because I have taken outspoken positions, I have ugly people talk to me every once in a while. It was astounding how ugly he was about something that all he had to do was be upfront with.
So the reason so you see why we're doing this segment, folks. The context here. This has been, and I can even say, Senator Cooper is welcome on this program. But he used to come on this program a lot, a whole lot, and that doesn't really happen anymore because of this falling out, because of being elected, saying you're going to do one thing and then not doing it. So I wanted to hash all that out, especially the video, which is fascinating to me. That back during the day, the establishment was very concerned about the arguments of those who were on the right. They were concerned about the influence that the information getting out there that the Republicans weren't actually implementing the platform or weren't actually doing what they're going to do. And we've seen how that's worked out. I mean, largely because of Senator Cooper. The expansion of Medicaid is here.
Exactly.
And it's not going anywhere.
And it's costing us hundreds of millions of dollars.
And that actually, I think, kind of goes into this next point, which is where we can say, look at all 7 tax increases that Senator Cooper voted for during the last legislative session. I maintain those tax increases are there because we can't pay for what Senator Cooper failed to kill in the first place.
They have to have more and more money, and they will hide it any way possible because this program sucks every available nickel out of it. And it's not, because I want to qualify this, it's not that we don't want people to have health care, but there are ways to do things that are economically responsible, and then there's the Arkansas Obamacare way to do things, which doesn't really help anybody. And if I have just pulled down last night an October 2019 evaluation of our Obamacare, our programs in Arkansas, and it is devastating in what it says about the problems with it and how much it's going to cost us. And this has been the problem all along. This is not a conservative program. Conservative programs actually help. These kind of programs cause more damage in the long run. Look at California.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you look at Blue Cross Blue Shield. You said it's not helping. I mean, it's very much helping them. I mean,
exactly.
It's a tax guaranteed percentage of profit in the law for them.
Do people understand that what's happening with this is we're not just paying for people to go to the doctor? What we do is we pay $600 and something a month for every person who's established on this program and that goes straight to the insurance companies, whether people go to the doctors or not, whether they really want to be a part of the program or not.
Yeah. Okay. So so I wanted to hash that out. That is certainly, from a conservative standpoint, a strike against it. But for those of us who were not around in 2014 or weren't paying attention, it may not mean as much that Senator Cooper broke the promise. Unfortunately for him, though, there are multiple examples just in the last couple of months at the beginning of the year where he did not vote in a conservative way, right?
Absolutely, and a couple of those are going to make a lot of people really angry. I think one of them is the Stand Your Ground program, where
the Stand Your Ground law, yeah.
The Stand
He
Your
was
Ground
the
law,
sole Republican vote that killed that.
Killed it in committee. So, and that was a program that was popular across Arkansas. There was no excuse for that. Absolutely no excuse for that vote.
Well, you have the radical group Moms Demand Action,
which is backed by George Soros. I don't know if people know that. That's one of his little programs that he contributes money to is Moms Demand Action. Makes them look a little less like moms, doesn't it? When you know that they're backed by George Soros.
Let's see here. What about HB 1684? This allowed non-citizen or DACA students to attend Arkansas State. He voted for that, right?
He voted for that, and that's a problem. I know a lot of people say, well, it's not fair to do this. Life is not fair. People who come into this country illegally create a lot of problems, and this has been that program. DACA was created by an executive order, essentially by Obama. It was never pushed through legislatively legal, and it's actually working its way through the court system now, and they may strike it down. So Arkansas, with John Cooper's help, decides that these students should be able to go to school on state tuition, whereas normally they would go out-of-state tuition. So what we did is we're allowing these students who are not here legally to go to school on in-state tuition, where we're allowing legal residents of the United States, say from Missouri, from Oklahoma, whatever, they have to pay out-of-state tuition.
Yeah.
So we're putting not legal residents above legal residents.
Yeah.
and that's offensive to me.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, I mean, it's just kind of denying the problem that we have.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the thing that it is
diminishing it.
I am all for education. I taught school for 30 plus years.
Yes.
But there are legal ways to do things, and there are ways that are not going to better our situation here.
Well, no, I mean, we're talking about a Republican primary in Craighead County,
Yes.
Arkansas. You're talking about, I believe Craighead County even went for Ted Cruz.
Yes.
So you have in a lot of Trump supporters too. But I mean, so at this point, I think everybody in a Republican primary voting is very conservative. I think to say that.
I would think so. Yeah.
You know what I mean. And those are the ones that are going to turn up, and I don't think they're going to like.
We're going to get every vote that's important. We're going to get all this information out, because what is important in a representative or a senator is having principles.
Mm-hmm.
And principles say you don't say, I'm going to do this, and then you turn around and do something else. Number one, you really ought to have the discernment to be able to make wise decisions, but you certainly don't then turn around and say to your supporters, I don't care what you think. My buddies are in Little Rock, and that's who I'm going to work with.
Yeah. Here's another one. Senator Cooper, one of only 2 senators who voted no on HB 1626. That was a bill that would have allowed schools to offer a voluntary Bible class to students, meaning an elective, not a part of the curriculum.
And they have to ask for it.
Yeah.
It's not something the school offers unless the students
Right.
ask for it. I read the bill. It passes constitutional muster, because that has been taken care of through the courts, because there have been a lot of schools who said, we want to do this. And so it wound its way through the courts, and this one passes constitutional muster. And when I attended one of his town hall meetings, the question was asked, why did you not support this? You were a Baptist minister. Mm-hmm. And he turned the question into, why are we not teaching religion in schools? And I was sitting there going, no, that's not the question. This is a Bible class. I taught English. The foundation of our literature, art, and law in Western civilization goes back to the Bible.
Yes.
If you don't know it, you are crippling yourself. And that's all this was, to teach them. I had students, just a very, very brief example. I had students, we studied a book at one point where the main character was fascinated. They weren't allowed to read. It was Fahrenheit 451.
Right.
And he went through the Beatitudes. We know them as Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Yep.
And so I started that, and I said, how many of y'all recognize this? Now, I taught in Jonesboro, Arkansas. I went to church with some of these students. I knew them, which they did not know. Well, that was a focal point of the book, and they did not know where that came from. Shakespeare is replete with biblical references that mean things. It would be as if you did not know what Herculean task meant, because you didn't know your mythology and that Hercules was extremely strong. It needs to be taught. People need to have a knowledge of this if you're going to go to college. And he voted against it.
Why did he vote against it, though?
I have no idea.
I listened to his explanation, and it didn't make any sense to me at all.
I suspect the governor didn't want it.
Really?
That's just pure opinion.
Huh.
Because it seems like a lot of the votes that Senator Cooper takes that are against what we want are also aligned with what the governor
Well,
does
and the
or does
governor,
not
I mean,
want.
to your point, again, it's speculation, but we do know it is a fact that Asa has said, according to the Gazette, he was quoted as saying he's not going to get in, he doesn't know what primaries he's going to get involved in, but he does have his eye up on this one. He's going to endorse Senator Cooper over Dan Sullivan. And the thing about that is I don't even know when all the China gate, when all that is settled, I don't even know if John's going to want Ace's endorsement, quite frankly, just because it's only a matter of time before there's more media that take a look at what's going on with
Well, I've
the
got a
law
hint
firm.
for people. Asa doesn't vote in Craighead County, and neither do the Little Rock legislators. They don't vote in Craighead County.
Or the Little Rock PACs either.
Exactly. We vote in Craighead County, and we're going to make this information available to everybody.
Yeah.
This is wrong. When you promise something to people, you stick to it.
I think.
And I don't believe Senator Cooper has done that.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair point to make. And this is going to be, I think it's also kind of going to get, let me just say this, because this is such a stark contrast, because we're going over John Cooper's voting record.
Yes.
If you go over Dan's voting record, it's very, 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 very good.
Exactly. He does what he said he would do.
Right.
What he promised.
So, when you are that squarely beaten in a primary race, in a Republican primary, I think John Cooper has two options politically. He's got to find a way to get Democrats to vote in a Republican primary, which is going to be difficult in
It
and of
is.
itself because the Democrats are going to be picking who they want to represent themselves for president.
Exactly.
And you can't do both. And the only other option is to go very, very negative.
We're seeing that already.
Yeah.
John Cooper does not have a problem with going negative. I brought him, we haven't got time to get into him today, but I brought a number of letters to the editor where he just excoriated people who did not agree with him. I mean, from Conduit to me to a Tea Party in general to the Tea Party of Arkansas. Very, very hateful things. So he has no problem at all going negative.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it's the very people. I mean, I had a conversation with him one time a couple of years ago. This was after he was voting. I texted him because not long after he won here, okay, he went over to help in the Scott Flippo race, defeating John Burris, who was a big government guy. Scott Flippo, for the most part, has remained conservative. You know, everybody has a vote here or there, it seems, but has remained, you know,
what he said he would be.
What he said he would be. And I just thought it was interesting when it came down to these votes, they were trying to stop the funding. You know, Cooper was lockstep with the establishment, and the very guy he campaigned for, you know, was still standing strong. And so I was just kind of asking, like, why did you even campaign for him? I mean, you know what I mean? And just kind of pointing out the hypocrisy. And then, of course, he said, I have a scorched earth policy and blah, 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 which I just tried to tell him, look, I haven't changed.
Exactly.
You've changed. Ira Stevens hasn't changed. The values of the Republican Party haven't changed. The Tea Party hasn't changed.
Exactly.
He's the one that's changed.
Exactly.
There's a reason the Craighead County Republican Party is voting 2/3 majority for the Republican Party platform, because they know Senator Cooper hasn't been voting that way.
Absolutely.
And you know, so his own county committee has turned against him. I mean, there's pockets of support in there, but I mean, for the most part,
overall, yes, it has. Yeah. And his response to that has been mind-boggling. You know, when he calls when he says that we can't support, political parties.
Yeah.
And then he also says that, asking your senator or representative to adhere to the platform is the equivalent of what the old Soviet Union did.
Compared to the
essentially
Soviet
calling
Union.
us communists. And you're thinking, this is just wow.
Do you think that there will be a debate between Representative Sullivan and Senator
Supposedly there will be one in January. I think
okay, good. That'll be
Dan
helpful.
Sullivan has put out that, but of course that was one of the questions, why are we not doing a debate instead of just, and so Dan Sullivan had tried to get set up with a debate, and I think Cooper has agreed to one.
Okay, good.
They may be going to political animals.
Okay. Well, that'll be, I mean, there's been many fair debates done in that forum.
Right.
So, Ira Stevens, it's always great to talk to you.
Thank you. It's
Thank
great
you
to be
so
here.
much. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Put stories in publications that talk about how Trump is failing the American farmer, and these soybean tariffs are punitive, and he doesn't care about farmers and all this other kind of stuff. And that is that's their media influence campaign that they're engaged in. These are not people who are interested in any kind of mutually beneficial relationship between us and them. They are all about China and advancing their own economic and military agenda.
Would there be any way? I mean, I know if you're accepting ad dollars, people are going to want to take the ad dollars. But you would think, I mean, if you're participating in a foreign government's ad campaign, I don't know if I'd want any part of that if I was a publisher.
Well, I tell you, I think we're going to have to reevaluate what it means, here to be an American. So whether you like Donald Trump or not, I think you have to recognize that.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so do we have the meme of the day? Okay, let's go ahead and show this meme of the day. I think this is fitting considering a Facebook video. Did it get knocked off? Let me see here. Do we still, is it completely knocked off? Yeah, I think it got knocked off. Facebook video got knocked off. Or at least we're told that there's a copyright violation or something. But I think this is fitting courtesy of the funny conservative underscore. When you post a great meme, anybody, I know there's people out there that have experienced this. Followers of Conduit News for sure. When you post a great meme, but now you can't use your Facebook for 7 days. You get put in that Facebook jail. Hey, did you hear, speaking of, I know this is different, shadow banning versus Facebook jail. Shadow banning is a Twitter thing. I'm sure it's also a YouTube. I'm sure it's an everybody thing, but specifically shadow banning. Twitter now just admits that they reserved the right to shadow ban. Do you remember when they used to deny they were doing it at all? But now it's in their TOS? I just find it interesting. But there's nothing, but you know, it's a private company. There's no way to hold them accountable. You know what I mean? Like, it's so crazy. Absolutely such a double standard. And again, I mean, if we were in the 1950s and someone had the authority to mute and make invisible protesters on the side of the road, but amplify these other protesters over here to affect public opinion, everybody would be like, no, we don't want that wizard in Isengard doing that.
If it's in TOS now, they have to call themselves a publisher instead of a platform.
No, this is definitely going to be antitrust very, very soon. Some sort of antitrust case. You would think, folks. We got a great show that we're going to start prepping for right now for your Tuesday morning. But have a great Monday, Arkansas. Be safe.